Hello, Jacksonites, and welcome, oh boy, to the next installment of the Phantasm review series. I'm not going to sugarcoat this one. Like I said at the end of my Phantasm 2 review, today we're reviewing my favorite of the Phantasm films. With 1994's Phantasm 3, Lord of the Dead. Which, by the way, I probably should have mentioned the unofficial subtitle to Phantasm 2 is Phantasm 2, The Ball is Back, which is a terrible subtitle. Just call it Phantasm 2. And as he just gave himself away, of course, joining me today is fellow reviewer Trevor Thomson. Make yourself known.
Howdy, everybody. Surprise.
The Ball is Back? Why?
That's a good tagline. Yeah, it's not a good subtitle. A good tagline, I guess, but not a good subtitle.
CSND, Phantasm 3, Lord of the Dead. Not even gonna, like I said, I'm not gonna bounce around the bush with this one. I am a big fan of Phantasm 3. I think this is Phantasm at its best. Ironically, it's in the middle of the franchise where the franchise reaches its peak, but whatever. So Trev, what's your personal history of Phantasm 3?
Well, again, that 2016 marathon preparing for Ravager. I enjoyed this one a whole lot whenever I first saw it. Curiously enough, there were a few subsequent viewings later on where, for whatever reason, it kind of fell out of favor. Not that I hated it, but it just wasn't as good as that first time. But thankfully, due to these rewatches, I've come back around to it. But it's still probably about the middle of the pack for me. I was going to say this is my second favorite, but I think it's my third favorite.
Well, when I first got around to checking out the Phantasm franchise, of course, I already saw all of... Damn, I need a haircut. I watched all of Decker Shadow's Phantasm videos. And of all of them, okay, so turns out Phantasm 3 is Decker Shadow's favorite of the series as well. This getting the highest rating that he gave the entire series. He gave the first film and Ravager a 2 out of 5. And he gave Phantasm 2 and Phantasm Oblivion a 3 out of 5. He gave Phantasm 3 a 4 out of 5. And I watched his video and I was like, this movie actually looks pretty good. So when I was getting around to my Phantasm marathon, when I bought the Phantasm collection for my birthday, this was the number one that I was most excited for. And also, so talking about this film's placement in the series, I've only seen one person, other than myself, of course, say that this is their favorite in the series, and that is, I guess, like Found Flix's girlfriend. I guess who she is. When Ravager came out, she did a Connecting the Phantasm Universe video, and she just so happened to mention that Phantasm 3 is her favorite in the series. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, when Cody Leach did his Phantasm marathon and did his Phantasm ranking video, Phantasm 3 came in as his second least favorite of the entire series. Honestly, I really could not disagree with that more. Though he did describe this movie in a way that I definitely do agree with. Cody Leach describes Phantasm 3, Lord of the Dead, as Phantasm meets The Evil Dead. And I actually do kind of agree with that. Not necessarily in concept, because it's still Phantasm. It's still its own thing. But it brings over the tone and the goofy, over-the-top nature of The Evil Dead 2. I personally do like that. I like my horror to be more goofy and over the top because that makes it more entertaining. There are times when you can have a more serious and grounded horror film, but if I'm just going to sit down and watch a horror movie and I just want to be entertained, I like them to be goofy and over the top. And this movie is certainly goofy and over the top. So, anything to add before I jump into the plot?
Yeah, actually, for whatever reason, kind of like a little preview of our next review series, I suppose. I got okay. Phantasm 2 kind of gives me a Tremors vibe, the original Tremors, and Phantasm 3 gives me a Tremors 2 vibe a little bit.
How so?
I don't know. There's something about the way they're shot. I think the first Tremors is probably the movie in that franchise with the highest budget. Phantasm 2 also has the highest budget out of all these movies. And
well, it's a big difference. Even still, the first Tremors movie has an $11 million budget, whereas, of course, Phantasm 3 has a $2.5 million budget.
True.
Phantasm 2 has a $3 million budget. That's what we're referring to. But I'll get to that when I talk more about this movie's production.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah, I think maybe it's like there's a kind of similar look to all the direct-to-video 90s sequels. And I don't know, there was just some kind of atmosphere on occasion in Phantasm 3 that reminded me of Tremors 2. I don't know, maybe just me.
Well, with all that being said, so following, let's get into the production. There's not much to say other than Phantasm 2 was not as successful in the box office as Universal was hoping that it would be. Because like I said, Universal was trying to cash in on horror at the time, and they were trying to have their own franchise. Like Paramount had Friday the 13th, and New Line had Nightmare on Elm Street, and whatever fucking cinema had Halloween. So Universal wanted one series, but unfortunately, like I said, Phantasm 2 brought in almost $8 million against a $3 million budget. So it wasn't the big heavy hitter that they were hoping that it would become. So Universal pretty much washed its hands of Phantasm and Don Coscarelli, saying, if you want to make another one, you're going to have to come up with your own funds. Universal distributed Phantasm 3, but they had absolutely no hand in its production whatsoever, which I actually think is a big improvement. Now, still, with that being said, despite that, Don Coscarelli was able to conjure up a $2.5 million budget for this movie, making it the second highest of the entire series. And honestly, despite the loss of $500,000, I think this movie looks way better than Phantasm 2, in my opinion. And that's not even just me having a bias towards this movie. I really do feel like this movie looks better in every way than Phantasm 2. So with all that being said, let's get into the plot of Phantasm 3. Shall we? Immediately after his apparent demise at the end of the previous film, a new tall man emerges from his dimensional fork, and at the same time, after being attacked and ejected from the hearse carrying Mike and Liz, a still alive Reggie watches as the car drives on and explodes. Reggie finds Liz dead, decapitated, but saves Mike from the tall man, once again back to being played by A. Michael Baldwin, because like I said, Universal washed its hands of Phantasm, so they no longer had any more studio interference, so Don Coscarelli could hire whoever the hell he wanted. Reggie saves Mike from the tall man by threatening to kill them all with a grenade. The tall man retreats with Liz's head, but promises to return when Mike is well again. I don't want him in pieces. Well, that's the only way you're going to get him. Then I'll wait. Take good care of him. Love it. In 1988, after spending 2 years comatose in a hospital, Mike has a near-death experience where his deceased brother Jody appears but is interrupted by the tall man. Ironically, this movie takes place in 1988, yet it was released in 1994. His deceased brother Jody appears but is interrupted by the tall man. Pardon the fire truck. Awakening abruptly, he is attacked by a demonic nurse, but he quickly subdues her. Reggie arrives as she dies, but her scalp bursts open to reveal a cranial sphere that takes off through the window after witnessing Mike awake with a eyeball thing out of Star Wars popping out of it. At Reggie's house, the tall man arrives via dimensional fork, fights off Reggie, transforms Jody into a charred sphere, and draws Mike through the gate with him. The next morning, Reggie awakens and begins traveling towards an Idaho town the Jody sphere muttered called Holtzville. Upon arriving in the deserted town, he is captured by 3 looters who lock him in the trunk of his 1970 Hemi Cuda. Reggie is rescued by a young boy named Tim, who kills the looters when they break into his house, and probably one of my favorite scenes of this entire movie because it's just so funny, but it's also fun. After they have buried the bodies in the yard, Tim tells Reggie how the tall man took his parents and destroyed the town. In the morning, Reggie and Tim find the 3 graves empty and their pink hearse gone. Reggie tries to leave Tim at an orphanage, but the boy hides in a car trunk, and Reggie encounters a mausoleum and is confronted by a sentinel sphere. However, he is subdued by 2 young women, Tanisha, of course, and Rocky, usually short for Raquel. And no, not Raquel Welch.
Yes.
Reggie tries to warn them, but Tanisha is killed by the sphere. Tim appears and destroys it with his pistol, and the 3 join forces, and they come upon a convoy of hearses driven by gravers and decide to follow them. At night, Jody appears to Reggie in a dream and takes a dream that involves Reggie fucking the shit out of Rocky. Cringe. Jody appears to Reggie in a dream and takes him to the tall man's lair where they rescue Mike. As Reggie wakes, Jody opens a portal and Mike emerges. The tall man tries to follow, however, Reggie closes the portal and severs the tall man's hands in the process. After fighting off the tall man's minions, including the undead looters, they enter a large mausoleum in the city of Bolton. No, not the Ultra Monster either. They discover a cryonics facility, and Mike remembers that the tall man dislikes the cold. This is kind of the last time this plot point will ever be mentioned, the fact that the tall man doesn't like the cold. While Reggie, Rocky, and Tim are separated and attacked by the looters, Mike consults with the Jody sphere in a psychic link. Jody explains that the tall man is amassing an army to conquer dimensions. And as he explains, they witness him removing the brain of a newly shrunken dwarf and placing it into a sphere, thus turning the body into a drone and the mind into a killer, as Jody says. The tall man soon senses their presence and recaptures Mike. 2 of the looters wheel in Tim on a gurney, and Mike tries to tell him of the thousands of spheres he witnessed, but the tall man paralyzes him before he can finish. Meanwhile, Rocky defeats her attacker and helps Reggie. Cut free by the Jody sphere, Tim runs into the remaining looters, who are killed by the Jody sphere and Reggie's 4-barrel shotgun. The trio crash into the embalming room, where the tall man is operating on Mike's head. Rocky impales the tall man with a spear dipped in liquid nitrogen, and they lock him in the freezer. However, a golden sphere breaks out of his head and attacks them. Reggie catches it with a plunger. And they manage to submerge it into the liquid nitrogen tank. Mike inspects his head wound, which is bleeding yellow blood, and he just so happens to find a golden sphere beneath the skin. With his eyes like silver spheres and complaining of the cold, he runs away in fear, but not before telling Reggie to stay away from him. Jody imparts some cryptic words on Reggie. Seeing is believing, but don't always believe what you see. Type bullshit. And Reggie assures them they'll be in touch before transforming and leaving as well. Reggie suggests exploring the mortuary, but Rocky declines and leaves in a hearse. Ugh, why? Tim reports that Mike tried to warn him, but they find out too late that there are thousands of spheres waiting to attack. And Reggie is pinned to the wall by a few, and he tells Tim it's all over and to just run. Just as Tim is about to take aim with his pistol, a new tall man appears, and he says, "It's never over." And then two hands crash through a window and yank Tim out, just like in 1 and 2, thus ending Phantasm 3. So what do you think of this plot?
I dig it, even though there are some things that bring it down from what I liked about 2. It's still pretty close to following it in terms of quality. And also about the budget thing, you can tell that this is the second most expensive movie in the franchise.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Money well spent.
Huh?
Money well spent.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. What I think of this movie's plot, this is what Phantasm 2 would have been if Universal didn't decide to exert so much control over the production. This, to me, is Phantasm at its very best. It does have a simple story, yes, but there's still the Phantasm feel of having twists, turns, dreams, and ambiguousness. There's a lot less ambiguousness than there was in the first Phantasm film, though, again, that movie was the result of it being half of a completed film. With this, there are twists and turns, but they're much more subtle, and the filmmakers were still trying to make this follow in the footsteps of the tone that was established with Phantasm 2, just adding back in the proper Phantasm elements. And I feel like, again, this is Phantasm at its very best. And yeah, this is good shit. I love it.
Yeah, 2 and 3 are definitely the most straightforward of the franchise.
Definitely for better, in my opinion.
Indeed.
What's your pros?
All right, I have 6. I tried to have 8 like last time, but I could only come up with 6 things I really, really liked. And number 1 is the tall man.
Yes.
I mean, it goes without saying that he's a pro in all these movies. But this go round, he's, instead of having one-liners, which is pretty much what he had in the first 2 movies, he starts to have some really provocative dialogue that intrigues me. It makes me think a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also some really neat shots with him in this movie. We're introduced to him sitting in this candlelit room, and I don't think that's the intro, but there is a moment where he's sitting in a candlelit room, which is kind of his lair in this movie. And he's holding a sphere and kind of pondering over it. I thought it looked really cool. And also there's a shot with lurkers walking alongside him that is, it stuck out to me because you never really see the tall man with his minions together with him very often. There's a shot like this in Oblivion with the spheres at the very beginning. But it's kind of curious that, again, you don't often see his minions like right there with him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's something to ponder.
But yeah, I think it's really between this and the next movie where I think the tall man probably has his best bits in the franchise.
In terms of being a villain, yeah, I would definitely agree. But in terms of dialogue, it's either Oblivion or Ravager, to be 100% honest.
Ah, yes, I'm actually glad you said that, but we'll get into that tomorrow for sure.
Oh, yeah. Foreshadowing intended.
Yes.
Continue. Pro number 2.
Pro number 2 is Reggie. This is actually where he takes center stage as the protagonist of the franchise.
I'm sure there are some people that take issue with the fact that the main character is no longer Mike, but I actually saying that I actually might be one of them, but Reggie is the stronger actor, so I think that's why he became center stage in this movie. But that could just be my theory. I'm not entirely sure, or maybe it was just Don Coscarelli was just forced to do that because he was trying to follow in the footsteps of Phantasm 2.
Well, it could be. And also, Reggie Bannister has been gaining experience this whole time, and I can't really think of anything that A. Michael Baldwin was in after the first Phantasm.
He wasn't in anything. That's why they didn't want to bring him back.
True. And
ironically, though,
so,
again, he owns an acting class out of Texas.
Yes, I heard about that. I think it was mentioned on one of the commentaries.
You goddamn Texan.
I'm actually wondering where he's from now. I'm going to have to look that up.
But continue.
But anyway, yeah, back to Reggie. I think with each one of these movies,
excuse me.
Well, arguably, it kind of takes a step back in the next one. But arguably, with each one of these movies, Reggie Bannister's acting does improve.
Well, yeah, of course.
And you know about what you said with Mike taking a back seat, he does, to that movie's credit, become center stage again in the next movie.
It's kind of like shared center stage.
Yeah, they go back and forth.
Continue.
All right, pro number 3 is Tim.
Yeah.
This is a badass little man.
Yeah. He was born in L.A. A. Michael Baldwin was born in L.A., but he now currently lives in Austin.
Well, that's pretty much the San Francisco of Texas. So, or actually, it's a combo of L.A. and San Francisco. Lots of movie talent down there. But yeah, anyway, Tim, I think, is probably an improved version of what they were trying to do with Liz in terms of bringing new people on or new characters on that have experienced the same thing that Mike did. And his introduction, I can't help but think that Don Coscarelli watched the Home Alone movies and said, you know,
oh my God, you too.
Yeah, he was thinking, I want to do an R-rated version of Home Alone. And I think he pulled it off really good.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. What, the first Home Alone movie was like 2 years before this, wasn't it?
Well, actually, well, yeah, you're right. And then the second one was only a year before they filmed this in 93.
Really?
Yeah, because Home Alone 2 came out in 92, and they filmed Phantasm 3 in 93.
Well, I'll be damned.
Yeah, because at the I know you don't watch credits, but the year that this is dated is 1993, even though it was released in 94.
Huh.
Kind of like how Tremors is a 1989 movie, but it was released in 1990.
I did not know that either.
You got to watch credits, man. No,
well, I don't watch credits, man, because they're boring.
Well, tomorrow's review, I'm going to mention something that is really cool about the Oblivion credits, although it can be shared separate from the credits.
Continue.
But yeah, anyway, yeah, Tim is definitely a pro of this movie. I think I like every scene that he's in, and like you said, he has a good little cock blocking routine going on.
I'll talk about that when I talk about this movie's humor.
Yeah, so unfortunately, it's a shame that the last we ever hear of him is whenever he gets grabbed through the window at the end. But yeah, he's definitely a highlight.
Yeah, I think it's a shame that he doesn't show up again throughout the rest of the series.
And not even an explanation.
Nope. Nothing.
And so, carrying on to pro number 4, I like Rocky in this movie.
I think this is 3.
You sure? Because Tall Man was number 1, Reggie was 2, and then Tim was 3.
Okay, gotcha. Pro number 4.
Yeah, pro number 4 is Rocky.
Even though
she's not as pretty as I'd like her to be. Excuse me for being a little chauvinist there. I do really like her character.
I kind of get the sense that she's gay.
Yeah, she is a little butch. That's unfortunate. And considering the only time we kind of see her in a sexual sense is during Reggie's dream, I think that's probably likely.
Oy.
But yeah. Again, if she was, well, I'm not going to go down that route. She injects something fresh into the franchise that I think is enjoyable. But that being said, there is an aspect of her that factors into the cons a little bit.
The way she exits the movie?
Yeah, and something else too, but we'll get there. But yeah, overall, I really like her addition to the movie, and it's a different dynamic. There's this sense of the road movie and meeting all these wacky characters in this really bizarre situation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so pro number 5 is the effects. The fact that this movie is the second most expensive movie in the franchise really shows. And I think probably my favorite effect in this movie is whenever the tall man's hands get separated from him and they become these little. They
look like shriekers.
They actually do a little bit, and it's superior to the pipe cleaner.
The pipe cleaner worm.
Yeah, for sure. I thought it was a really, really neat effect, and that scene is probably for creature feature fans probably a highlight for them.
Absolutely, yep.
But everything else, the lurkers still look pretty good. Maybe not as good as 2.
Nah.
I think 2 is where they look the best, but they're still used pretty good. There's some CGI morphine with the spheres. That is pretty cool.
Yeah, I'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah, but definitely for sure, the money when it comes to effects was well spent on this movie because it's one of the things that's always stuck out to it about it for me.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
And my last pro number 6, is the idea behind the Renegade Sentinel Jody Spear.
Yeah,
I think it's a really neat idea to have the tall man's forces not all be 100% obedient. It kind of changes the odds of the situation a little bit. Although one could argue that the next movie
invalidates it.
Invalidates it a little bit, but I don't know. I think there's still leg room for both sides of that to work. But I always found that to be, this is a nice new dynamic. I mean, that's really probably a strength of this movie, is that there's a lot of nice dynamics added into it that just continue to keep it fresh.
That Universal surely would not have allowed had they kept their hands on the series.
Which is true. Unfortunately, because of their lack of involvement, the movies got cheaper and cheaper after this.
Oh, God, yes. Alrighty, so my pros for Phantasm 3. Let's see. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 pros for Phantasm 3. Damn. Well, strap yourselves in, folks. I'm going to actually sit cross-legged for this one. So, pro number 1, the tone. Irene Mojica says hi. Hello. Pro number one is the tone of this movie. This is the kind of tone that I like for my horror movies, and especially for Phantasm. Like I said in one of our previous reviews, I do think one franchise that Phantasm would pair very well with is The Evil Dead. And I just had epiphany last night, too, that I think it would pair pretty well with Nightmare on Elm Street as well, but that's a different subject. But I do think Phantasm would blend very, very well together with the Evil Dead series. And I agree with Cody with him saying that this is like if Phantasm cross paths with the Evil Dead. This is exactly how it would play out. It's goofy, it's fun, it's over the top. There's a lot more blood and a lot more violence all over the place. There's some creature effects. There's a lot more wacky stuff thrown at you, and there's a lot more action scenes, a lot more explosive stuff. This is over the top entertaining goodness. And this is the kind of shit that I really like for my Phantasm. Like I remember when I was watching this movie, I was just sitting here and I was like, I had a smile on my face, and is when Tall Man said, "It's never over." Crash snatched him. I was like, hell yeah, that was a good movie.
Exactly.
This movie's fun. No question about it. This is a fun ass movie. Pro number two is the music. While it is a good music score, it's still Phantasm. It still sounds like Phantasm. It sounds more like the first movie than the second movie does, which is good. I kind of like that partial return to form. I kind of do also have to say this might be the most basic Phantasm score. It's not spectacular, but it's not bad in the slightest. It's just good. It's Phantasm, which isn't bad at all, but it's still a good score. It fits this movie very well. Pro number three is that this movie is a lot more imaginative. All of the shackles of studio interference and them saying you can do this, but not this and this and this, and you can do this, but not that and that and this. Hang on. Come in. Right there. Pardon. Who's making taters? Okay. See you in a few. Pardon me, that was my nephew. All of the shackles of the studio interference are gone, and Don Coscarelli is allowed to do whatever the fuck he wants, and I welcome it back with open arms. Combining with the more entertaining aspects of Phantasm 2 with the more wacky and crazy mindfuck stuff of Phantasm 1, and you get a really nice cocktail of soup here with this film, and I think it's very well done. Don Coscarelli is allowed to make a lot more expansions on the mythos and the lore in this movie. There's a lot more explanations for shit. Like we explain how are the drones created, or kind of. We're shown how the Sentinel spheres are powered. Not really shown how they're created, but you can infer that. But they're powered by shrunken down brains. Okay, cool. And we're also explaining like what's with the lurkers. Well, they're just drones. Okay, cool. There's just a lot more wacky shit and a lot more imaginative shit that Don Coscarelli incorporates into this movie, and it's refreshing and it's entertaining and it's more rewarding as a Phantasm fan, at least in my view. Pro number 4 is the Tall Man. Of course, like Trev said, Tall Man is a pro in any movie that he's in. Though you could also say like Godzilla is a pro in any movie that he's in. But with this series, again, I will kind of say that this might be like the least best Phantasm performance. But gone are the one-liners of Phantasm 2, And in my opinion, what makes what makes the Tall Man great in this film is the Tall Man feels a lot more than just a creepy, scary old man. He feels more like an evil mastermind supervillain. And so this escalates his sense of threat a lot more because we also know what he's doing on Earth. He's amassing an army to create dimension or to conquer dimensions. Now we understand kind of what his plans are with the galaxy a lot more, because beforehand we just thought he was stealing corpses and turning them into zombies just for the sake of stealing corpses and turning them into zombies, or just to send them to his home planet for slave labor. That doesn't really feel all that threatening. Though here, when when it's revealed that his plan is to amass an army of drones, gravers, and sentinel spheres to conquer dimensions, that feels more threatening. That feels more like a big problem. And that escalates the Tall Man from being just a creepy horror movie villain to being a scary supervillain, in my opinion. And that's what I love. That's one of many things I love about this movie, is that it gives Tall Man not necessarily more of a personality, but it kind of does expand on his identity a lot more, and it creates him into something a little more unique than he already is. So that's great. And he also does have a couple of good lines too, like the "It's never over." And of course, that scene where he's sitting in that chair in a candlelit room, he's just holding a sentinel sphere and he's just giving his evil tall man look. It's great. And you can tell Angus Scrimm is just having a blast.
Or even that exchange with Reggie that you already mentioned, whenever he's trying to get Mike, and they're kind of having a standoff.
I don't want him in pieces. Then I'll wait. Take good care of him. Love it.
I concur, sir.
So yeah, Tall Man's great. Slightly disappointing that he's not really that physical in combat, but his presence and his intimidation factor and his plans make up for the lack of that. So that's great.
We could always just play Terrordrome. He's a lot more physical there.
True. Excuse me. Pro number 5 are the 3 zombies. I'm just going to call them zombies. The 3 resurrected looters of Holtzville. They start out just as a bunch of kind of rip-off Home Alone 3 goons. Of course, they're given good deaths too, but as they make a good secondary recurring antagonist throughout the film. Like watching Reg, Rock, and Tim try to take on these 3. They're just like cockroaches. No matter how many times you flush them down the toilet, they always come back. We have multiple encounters with these fucks all throughout the movie, and each and every one is entertaining as fuck. And that female zombie, I think she gets the worst of of all the treatment in this film. Like, she gets her ass kicked. She gets a tomahawk to the head. She gets run over by a car. She takes a full-on 4-barrel shotgun blast to the face, run over again. She gets punched and kicked a whole bunch of times, kicked out of a window and falling to her death, and then having a perfect spherical hole blasted through her face by the golden sphere. And only that is what it takes to finally kill her. The other 2 get shot and trampled a few times, but they don't take a big enough beating compared to their female consort. And it's really entertaining to watch these zombies get the shit beaten out of them. And they work as extra minions for the Tall Man. I kind of feel like the Tall Man was just like, I'll resurrect these guys to just give me some extra bigger muscle until they get their asses kicked. And they do. So, oh well. It's great. What?
Aren't they basically gravers without their suits, though?
Yeah, they're a little more like loose cannon gravers, you could kind of say.
Yeah.
But I love them. They're entertaining. Their acting is a little iffy, but I kind of feel like that may have been intentional just because they're goofy, crazy, psychopathic serial killers. So, oh well. Pro number 6 is this movie's humor. This now, of course, this movie is a lot more goofy, which means there's a lot more funny bits. Um, just the mannerisms and the acting is a little more over the top, so it's just kind of fun to laugh at. But there are some legit moments of actual humor, like during the scene where Reggie is fucking Rocky in his sleep. Jody is just sitting there in his chair, and he's just watching these two, like, oh my god, what the fuck am I doing? And he's like, hey Jody, what you doing? Reg, I need to talk to you for just a moment. Kind of busy here, Jody. Well, Reg, I need you to get behind me. I mean, I need you to get behind what I'm trying to say here. I kind of feel like that was not scripted. I really feel like that was not scripted. I felt like Jody was trying to improv, and he was watching what was going on, and he just said what he was supposed to say, but then he instantly was like, nah, that's not going to work. So he just reworded it. That was funny. I actually did laugh quite a bit out loud after that, partially just to relieve the cringy ass tension because of I don't want to watch Reggie fuck Rocky. I'm sorry. Because, like, what the fuck?
That was Jody's best moment, in my opinion.
Yeah, probably. But in my opinion, the funniest moment in the entire movie, it's two things. One is when Reggie, Tim, and Rocky come across the motel. Reggie's saying to Tim, like, hey, you can have the whole car to yourself to sleep in here over the night. Me and Rocky are going to have the room. Rocky comes up and is like, do you want to sleep in with us? And Reggie's in the background. It's like, whenever Rocky like turns around to look at him, he just like folds his arms. No. But Tim finally just he gets what's going on, so he's like, oh, nah, I'll just stay out here. I'll leave you two alone. And then I think the funniest moment in the movie is when they're sleeping out in the desert before Jody takes Reg to get Mike. Reg says to Rocky, the best way to keep warm at night is to share a sleeping bag to share body heat, right? Reg, give it up. So Rocky turns over and tries to go to sleep. Reg lays down in his sleeping bag, and he looks over at Tim, and Tim's looking at him with this giant fucking shit-eating grin. And you know that he's just like, ha ha, she said no. I think it's hilarious. Just looking at Tim with his shit-eating grin and the look that Reg gives him, he's just like, fuck you. It's funny. God damn, is it funny. Humor is on fleek in this movie. Next is, speaking of which, Tim. Like Trev said, Tim is one badass little man. Like I said, he's funny, of course, but he knows how to think on his feet. He's ingenious. He knows how to use a pistol, and he's not the embodiment of the constantly scared, constantly getting himself into trouble kid. He's proactive. He tries to help. He knows his way around a gun, and he seems to take to this situation pretty damn well, almost like he was built for it. He never whines, he never cries, he never complains, and he never bitches and moans. Tim is a great child character, and again, it's just such a shame that the rest of the series never even give him so much of a boo statement. Like, the fuck? All right, so pro number 8 is Rocky. Probably the best female character in this entire film. That list is kind of short, but yeah, she's definitely the best female character in this film, in this entire series. Again, she's proactive. She knows how to kick ass. She knows how to use a pair of nunchucks, which I think is kind of dumb, but whatever. And she takes shit from nobody. And also the way that she cock blocks Reggie is also another scene that's kind of funny. She makes it seem like she's about to bone Reggie, but then she just handcuffs his hands to the headrest of the bed. It's like, sweet dreams, Reg. Ugh, damn it.
Yeah, that was pretty fun.
Fuck. I have one problem with her character, but I'll get to that when I get to the cons. But not much to say about Rocky other than she's a great character. She knows how to kick ass. She's very proactive. She's fun to watch. Not much else to say. Pro number 9 is the action scenes. They're much better than in part 1. Not to say that the action scenes in part 1 were bad, but they still had a little bit of a pair of handcuffs on them, no pun intended. This movie doesn't. There's blood, there's explosions. It's more fast paced and more high octane. It's more entertaining. The action scenes are just very, very, very well done. And they give this movie another sense of uniqueness that the rest of the series doesn't have, which is a shame. I feel like, ironically, what Phantasm 2 was trying to achieve, it fails. This movie succeeds in what Phantasm 2 was trying to do. I feel like Phantasm 3 is the most mainstream of the entire series. I think if anybody was to be just a casual horror movie fan and you wanted to show them at least one Phantasm movie, I feel like 3 would be the best one to share. Kind of like with how Friday the 13th Part 3 may be one of the best installments of the entire series to show mainstream audiences, because you get the best of both worlds in one package with both Friday the 13th and Phantasm 3. So, there you go.
If nothing else, 2 and 3 make for a good selling point, I guess.
True, yes. Yeah, action scenes are great. And the final pro that I have, pro number 10, is the special effects. They're great. I don't know if they're better than Phantasm 2, but they're at least definitely equal to them. The gore and the blood, and actually, no, I would say they're better because there's a lot more shown than there was in Phantasm 2. Like the one drill scene that we have when, I guess it's her sister or maybe her girlfriend, whatever, when Tanisha, I think her name is, gets her brain drilled out. There's blood galore, which looks way better than in Phantasm 2. So that's good. And also the zombies, they get charred, they get bullet holes, they get oozing yellow and red blood all over the place. Their teeth turn blackish and nasty. They leak blood out of their mouths when they're shot or killed. The zombies look great. The gore effects look great. The lurkers look great. Not quite as good as part 2, but they still look really good. And when the nurse has, at the beginning, when she gets killed, she's just splurting yellow blood all over the place. When the sentinel spear shoots its way out of her skull, that looks really good. There is a little bit of CGI. This is the first Phantasm film to showcase CGI. There's very little of it, thankfully. And what is used, I think, actually looks really good, especially for this film's budget. It's only used for when Jodie is morphing into a sentinel spear. And I think it looks fine for what it's trying to accomplish. Overall, the effects look great, and I definitely do think they look a little bit better than Phantasm 2 in most ways. There's the one way where they don't, and that's the lurkers, but still, that's fine for what this movie's trying to accomplish. And also, Reggie fucking uses his quad barrel shotgun a lot more than he does in Phantasm 2, which is so much more satisfying. Again, you literally see one of the zombie chick take a full-on 4-barrel shotgun blast to the face and crumple like a rag doll and get run over by a hearse. It's great. Love it. That's all I have to say. That's all the pros. What are your cons?
Well, before I get into that, I would like to add on the note of the effects, other than the hand monsters, I also really like the shot of the dissected or vivisected lurker. That looked really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Okie dokie. So I have 5 cons.
Wow.
I'm going to say 1 and 2 together because I think a lot of the same problems plague both. Con 1 and 2 are A. Michael Baldwin and Bill Thornberry, unfortunately. I like seeing him back, A. Michael Baldwin. Actually, I like seeing both of them back. But their acting leaves a lot to be desired. And with Mike, I'm thinking in particular the scene where he's talking to the Jody Sphere. That was not really bad, but it was bordering on cringy a little bit. And then with Bill Thornberry, as Jody, his line deliveries are just kind of blah most of the time, except for that one moment, which I think I agree with Nick, was the improv moment during Reggie's dream. Yeah. So pretty much, they're not awful, but they leave a lot to be desired, so I had to put them on the con list. Okay, and then con number 3 is Where's the Red Planet? This one and Oblivion, and it might be a budget thing, especially for the latter.
With Oblivion, I definitely do think it's because of a lack of budget, but we'll get to that when we talk about Oblivion.
Yeah. So, they kind of hint at it because the Jody Sphere, whenever he's trying to get people to travel back and forth between the dimensional forks, he shines a red laser beam. So I think that's a reference to it.
Possibly,
but other than that, it seems like they mainly focus on the tall man's base of operations, mainly being his new mausoleum that he's in.
That may have been the point.
Yeah. Continue.
I just wouldn't really call that a con. I would just the Red Planet is still missing, but if you watch Phantasm 2, it's still there. I just think that maybe this movie was just trying to focus on the new base of operations, like you said. So I wouldn't necessarily call that a con. But
see again, that's a good point, but it still bugged me a little bit because, at least 3 out of the 5 movies, they actually show it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not really necessary to each installment, but again, it still bugged me enough that in coming up with cons, I had to list it. All right, and this is con number 4. Unfortunately, this is to counteract one of Nick's pros, is that I wasn't impressed by the score. Unfortunately, there are moments here and there which are memorable. In fact, there's one little bit I can't remember exactly where it was in the movie, but it's actually used on the Anchor Bay DVD for Phantasm 3. But it's kind of a nice, sort of serene version of one of the notes for the main theme. But yeah, overall, I think the problem is that I didn't really ever notice the music much. But I guess that's...
It just sounds like kind of generic action movie music.
Yeah. And I guess that's not a bad thing, so long as you're entertained by what you're actually paying attention to on the screen.
It does still also include the Phantasm theme itself. It's just the one that's the most subdued.
Yes, and at the very least, they do a reprisal of the Phantasm 2 theme over the credits for 3, so that was good.
True.
Okay, and my final con, and this, aside from Michael Baldwin and Bill Thornberry, it's most noticeable with Rocky, and that's the acting. some of her line deliveries are not that great. And again, that might just be me being nitpicky, but, I guess, if I had been calling the shots, I would have said, okay, let's try another take, or at least one more take. But again, overall, what Rocky brings to the table kind of supersedes this. But again, I could have ended up with just 4 cons, but I figured I needed to have a little bit more. So that did bug me a bit. And there were the looters, but like Nick said, the acting for them probably added to their goofy effect. So it didn't bother me as much as it did Rocky. So yeah, those are my cons.
Well, I have... Hang on. I have 3. Hang on one second. Con number 1, this is the one that's the most nitpicky, is, once again, I think this film is too short. This does clock in as, I believe, the second longest of the entire series at 91 minutes. I still think it's too short because the stuff that I like in this film, I want to see more of. So by the time it's over, I'm just like, God, so much more could have been done. Now, I will say that this movie does make the best use of its somewhat short runtime because of all the shit that's flying at you the whole time. But that's another issue as to why I think this movie is so short. There's so much shit that entertains you throughout the entire length. It just makes it fly by in the snap of a finger. So that's a little bit of a problem, I think. But this is probably the one where it being so short bugs me the least. But still, it is a problem nonetheless. Con number 2 is Rocky's exit. She just kind of feels like she gives up. Like, you know what? I'm out. And she literally says this shit is just not for me. Though she shows back up in Phantasm Ravager, but whatever. I just kind of feel like they did not have an excuse whatsoever for why she wanted to leave the scene. She just kind of felt like, you know what? I'm out. Goodbye. Drives off. Just feels kind of lazy and very last minute.
You know what I think it might have been? Is that they didn't know whether or not they were going to make another movie and if they would be available. So that might, Rocky and Tim, so that might have been why they did that.
Maybe so, but still. And the last problem that I have with this movie is Mike. Don't get me wrong. I like the return of A. Michael Baldwin. It's nice to see him back. But he's kind of a bitch in this movie.
Yeah, and also he comes back, but then he's not in it a whole lot either.
No, he's not. It kind of feels like a dangling a carrot in front of your face if you're a fan of Mike. But my main issue with it, like, there's elements of him when I want to see more of Mike, because when Reggie says, "Here, load up the gun," he's all gung-ho firing away at the shotgun at the zombies. Like, okay, like, show more of this camaraderie with Reggie. I want to see more of that. It's great. What really kills me is just the way that he acts like a whiny bitch so much throughout this movie. Or when he's trapped inside of Tall Man's mausoleum, he's like, "I don't know what you want. I don't know what you mean." He just acts like a total whiny little ass. And Reggie looks at it later. Reggie says, "Mike, what's up?" Just a memory about the tall man. The cold. He doesn't like the cold.
Yeah, that wasn't too good either.
Kind of casual there, aren't you, man?
Yeah, that's like my biggest thing is that it's either just kind of almost cringy or it's just kind of blah, you know?
Yeah. I don't mind Bill Thornberry. I think he's fine for the most part. Kind of makes sense for him to be monotone as the Sentinel Sphere. But I think he conveys like the right amount of emotion when he's actually in human form, quote unquote. And also, like I said, the funny line where Reggie's fucking Rocky is like, Reggie, I need to talk to you for this moment. I think that's fine. It's funny. But yeah, I think Bill Thornberry's fine. It's just really it's Mike that is the weakest character in this film, and it sucks because there's elements of Mike that I want to see more of, but nah, he just doesn't work for me in this film. Thankfully, he's redeemed in the next movie, which we'll talk about.
Yeah, exactly. I was just about to say he's actually pretty badass in the next movie.
That's really all I have to say about Phantasm 3. Any final thoughts?
No, it almost made my second favorite, but when I really thought about it, and this is probably going to baffle Nick, one of the ones we're talking about tomorrow actually ended up being my second favorite.
Yeah, what that says. That is so obnoxious. Could you be any more obnoxious? Oh, and I can still hear it. God, fuck you. Anyway, final thoughts on Phantasm 3? Yeah, this is my favorite of the entire series. I feel like if I was to be in the Phantasm mood, this would be the one that I would pop on willy-nilly. It's fun, it's goofy, it's entertaining, it's action-packed. This is the shit when it comes to Phantasm as far as I'm concerned. Which is why I will be rewarding an 8.5 out of 10 to Phantasm 3.
And my rating won't be much lower than that. Mine's going to be an 8 out of 10.
Great. At least we can agree on one of these movies. So that's all I really have to say.
Too much.
Huh?
Well, we don't disagree too much.
True, but still. So yeah, post your comments down below and let me know what you think. Hit the like button and hit the subscribe button and share this video with your friends. And look forward to tomorrow for something extra special. Not going to say what it is. Ironically, my eyes are shiny like Mike's in this movie. And I will see all you guys. And if you guys want to survive, don't go to a mausoleum where you see giant floating silver balls. And I will see you guys in the next video. Boy.